Recipes used are in the description box below. Hi! I'm making a cake again. So I'm using a box of cake mix, carton of egg whites, stick of butter for the cake. Melting my stick of butter, pouring the cake mix, and I measured out 9 tablespoons of carton egg whites to equal 3 full eggs. Start mixing it because I forgot to put the water in. I'm supposed to put in a cup and 1/4 water. Mix that until it looks like this. I have a heart-shaped pan for Valentine's Day. Flouring the pan to keep it from sticking, and pour the batter in. Get as much of it in there as possible. And then in the oven it goes. I'm gonna put the oven at 350. Now for this cake I wanted to make a strawberry filling. So I got my strawberries, granulated sugar, lemon juice, cornstarch, butter, and later on you're gonna need some water. You just want to cut up your strawberries. Don't question why I'm cutting like this. I'm tired and I never cut anything right. It feels like do as I say, not as I do. I'm sure there's a safer way to do that. But you put a tablespoon of lemon juice and strawberries and a 1/2 cup of sugar into a small saucepan or pot. And you mix it until the strawberries start to juice up. And then you want to blend the strawberries together. I was going to use the blender, but the blender needed to be clean, so I used whatever that's called. The hand blender. I don't remember what it's called. But you do that until it's smooth. There's no more strawberry chunks in there. Take a small bowl, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and 2 tablespoons of water. Mix that together. I don't bake. I didn't know cornstarch would have been thick, and by I didn't know, I meant I didn't think about it until I started trying to mix it. I was tired. And you slowly pour the cornstarch in until the strawberry mixture becomes thick, kind of like a pudding. Let it sit for a little bit longer. Cake's all done. And then pour the strawberry mix into a bowl and put that in the fridge. And then we save icing the cake and putting the filling inside the cake for tomorrow. Okay, it is now the next day. And I'm now going to make the icing for the cake. You need 1 pound of powdered sugar. You need 2 teaspoons. You need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And 2 sticks of butter, 2 softened sticks of butter. You put the 2 sticks of butter in a bowl and you whip them until they turn a paler yellow than they already are. During this process, I was looking at my whipped butter and felt as though it was not going to be enough icing just based on the butter alone, so I went ahead and doubled up all of the ingredients. So I will be using that entire 2-pound bag of powdered sugar and 4 tablespoons of vanilla extract. Mix it until it's a paler yellow. I just mixed it until there wasn't any give. Took the whole bag and dumped it in there. Rather have too much than too little. Poured our 4 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then the mess. That was powdered sugar flying everywhere. And I'm shocked that it didn't completely cover the camera lens. And you want to just keep mixing until it gets chunky. The recipe says that if you feel as though it's too thick, to add a 1/4 cup of milk or heavy whipping cream. But at no point did I feel like it was coming out too thick. Obviously it's going to be a little sticky trying to mix it all because it is just meant to be thick, but I didn't think it was so thick that I couldn't work with it. Once I had the icing looking the way I wanted it to, I split up some portions for the different colors. I used a small bowl for the lowest amount, which was just going to stay that eggshell white looking color. I used a bigger bowl to put some aside to be pink, and then I left the rest in the big bowl to be red. Then used the food dye, dropped 2 drops of dye because I didn't want to use too much, and just mixed it until I could get it even. Probably could have used a stronger spoon to mix it, but it's okay. Also, the colors are not coming through on the camera. I apologize for that. I don't know why, but believe me when I say that it looked a lot like a nice pastelish pink in real life, and it's just not showing up on camera. But what did give me an issue was the red. In that recipe that I used for making the icing, they did say to use gel instead of food dye, because in the recipe it said that using the gel would be more vibrant, and I probably would have had to use less of it, but the gel was more expensive, so I stuck with the food coloring, and the red was not getting to the shade that I wanted to get it to, so I wound up using 8 drops of food coloring, and I just sort of settled for the shade of red that I got because I did not want to keep adding food dye. But I don't think it turned out as a bad shade of red. You wouldn't be able to tell on the camera, and even then it wound up looking more magenta by the end of it all, but it's alright. You can tell the colors apart. It's not like it looked too much like the pink dye I already made. So now I grabbed the cake board, and it's time to flip the cake out. Except it didn't want to come out very easily. I had to do some finagling, separate it from the sides a bit. It was all over my hands. The cake was really delicate, fluffy, and soft, which is, I guess, technically a good thing, but it did freak me out a bit because of what I was planning to do with the cake. I was afraid that it wouldn't have been able to handle it and it would have just fell apart. I moved the cake onto a cake turner. I'm getting a little fancy over here. I successfully removed the top of the cake without having any more issues. So it was more sturdy than I gave it credit for. I was afraid there for a second. Then it was time to pour in the strawberry mix, and I did basically just pour it all on top of the cake, which would be my biggest mistake during this process. It started spilling out, and if you're asking why would I do that instead of putting it in slowly, I have no answer. I just have the consequences of my actions. And this was a detriment to the rest of the project. Every decision I make after this is about just working around the fact that I had messed that up. So now I'm going to start icing the cake. So the first thing I do is immediately just start plopping the red icing onto the cake so I can try to figure out how exactly I'm going to remedy the situation that I've created for myself. I decided to simply just cover it up, even though there was no covering that up. It looks like I'm about to feed an actual bleeding human heart to my family, but it's all I could think to do. And I think it would have looked even worse if I didn't attempt to do that. So I used all of the icing, smoothed it out with the cake spatula, so it looks smoother than my bun cake, but it does still look a little rough. It does still look like I'm not used to doing this. But after I was semi-satisfied with that, because if I kept doing it, I was gonna lose my mind, I then started trying to figure out how to do these piping bags. And at first I did it completely wrong, but I figured it out. Wasted a piping bag, but it's okay. The occasional casualty during these things. But what you're supposed to do is you put the cobbler inside the bag, push it as far as it'll go. They say on the box to mark it with a pencil, but I just did a little snip at where it was at, which I will again regret later. So once you mark where it's supposed to be at, you take the cobbler out and then you cut it, and then you put the cobbler back in, push it until the little nubs are showing out through the bag a little bit. Then you put on your tip that you want to use, and then you screw on the tab or whatever it's called. Don't remember what it's called, but then you screw that part on and it holds everything in place. And then you start filling the bags with the icing you want to use. So I'm using a 32 tip for the border, and I'm using a 4 tip for some lettering work. I start piping, and I decided to only pipe around the top border because I felt like piping around the bottom would have been a bit futile, so I just decided to make the top look the best that I could make it. And I will say that it was really satisfying piping the border. Then after that, I would start the lettering, which is where I run into consequences of my actions number 2, from not simply marking the end point with a pencil or a marker or something, and just going off of memory and trimming the bag. I start lettering. It's just going to be a simple Happy Valentine's Day message. And then I see that the side of the bag is spilling out icing, because of course it is. But I decide to just continue on to get the whole message done. And I add a little heart at the end. And I almost forgot that I had bought glitter. I bought glitter. So I'm going to put the glitter on the border icing. And then the cake is all done. I made a strawberry filled white Valentine's Day cake. Well, definitely came out a lot more messy than the first time I tried baking, but it's smoother now, and I really did like piping on the border. And I'm still trying to figure out my filming setup, because if I was filming on the right of me, I would have been able to potentially would have been able to have a little bit more control over the piping bag. I am not left-handed, but I was trying to write with my left hand while squeezing with my right, which probably was not the best idea. But other than that, it came out okay. I will let you all know how it tastes after this video comes out, because I have to immediately start editing it now. It is the day of. Leave a like and comment and let me know how you enjoyed your visit to the Hollow. Subscribe to receive more invitations to the Hollow, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.